everybody, welcome back to another episode of Warriors Off-Road. Today we're going to show you how to install a transmission in the Hisun Sector and Strike 250s. Same engine, different chassis, a little bit different in the back, but they both utilize the same engine. Now this engine is also used in Massimo, Bennche, Coleman, and a bunch of other products that have the same vehicle but just different decals on the vehicle, so this should apply to all of those. What I have here is I start out with the right side case. I've gone through it. While it's apart, you're going to want to check all the bearings in here, making sure everything's good to go. I have a complete list of all the bearings and oil seals you would need at warriorsoffroad.com. Just go to the download section and it'll show engine rebuild kit for bearings and seals. And they'll go into more detail about all the bearings. You can usually source these locally from your bearing shop. Alright, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start out with the main shaft. Now the main shaft is a long one. This one actually hooks up to what we call the secondary clutch or the torque clutch, and it's activated by the engine. That's what activates your transmission. That's what makes it turn. It's not engine run. So we're going to start with this one as one of our first ones to put in. So I always start with the front. Now you'll notice too the crank's not in here. When you pull the cranks apart, sometimes the crank will stay on this side, sometimes it stays on the left side. It doesn't really matter which way because it doesn't interfere with this installation, so that's good news. So again, you're going to start off with a nice clean surface, get it all ready. You've already cleaned all the old gasket material off here. You're going to start with this, and you're going to inspect your transmission. You're going to inspect the bearing surface on both sides. You're going to inspect the threads. You're going to inspect all the gears, look for chips, any burrs, any broken parts. Even though this one's got some wear visual on there, I can't feel it with my fingernail, which tells me that these gears are still good. There's no bluing from heat, no discoloration. This is a good shaft. So we're going to start by sliding this into here on the top bearing hole. Now the next one we get is going to be this one here. Now this one you can identify, it only has two main gears on this shaft. The other assembly has three, so this is what we start off with. Now this one also has small indentations here. This is where the sprocket goes on the outside of the left side. Now this one is called the output shaft. Now the way we install this, if you have these all apart, this is your shift forks, and this is the smaller one. It only has one. It will slide in this way. The side with where the gear goes on, the output shaft, is the smooth side. The side that goes into the right side of the case is actually the spring-loaded side. And you can see it here. So we're going to assemble it like this. You're going to see the small arm on the shift fork and a thick arm. The small arm faces you, faces this way. And what we're going to do is we're going to put it in this bearing right here, for here, and the shift fork shaft is going to go in the first small hole down here. So what I do is I line them up, I get them in there, and there's a little bit of interference, so what I do is I slide out the main shaft just a little bit. Boom. See? Bob's your uncle. There you go. It's all good. Rotates freely, no problems. Next we're going to start off with what we call the counter shaft. Now the counter shaft has three gears on there. That's an easy way to tell it apart. Before you install this, there's a couple things you need to know. First of all, there's some shims here. There's a thick shim on this side, and I say thick because of the height of the shim, not the thickness. So that one goes on this side, and that faces the right side case cover. On the small gear, it'll be the small or a thin-walled shim. See that? There's obviously a big difference between the two. You can see them here. So this one goes towards the right, and this one goes towards the left. The small gear faces the left. So this bearing surface, and again you're going to inspect all the gears, make sure everything's good on here. Bearing surface on this side is going to go here, in the hole on this side. I'll turn this around so you can see it a little bit better. So we're going to put this into here, and this part of the shift shaft fork is going to go in that hole. Now this assembly, same thing. The small end of the shift forks goes towards me, and it goes just like that. Again, just like that. Okay? And so the smooth part is going to go to the right case, and the spring part on this one is going to go towards the left side. So I'm going to turn the case sideways a little bit. I'm going to line those up. And I'm going to do basically the same thing. I'm going to push that main shaft out just a bit until I get this to fall in, and then I'm going to slide the main shaft back in, and we are good. All right, I like the look of that. So now comes a fairly easy part. We're going to take the shift drum. Shift drum goes in one way. This side right here with a small pin goes into the right side case down in here. And this part goes to the left side of the case. Now when I install this, and that's going to go in this needle bearing assembly right here, I have 3 points on these shift forks that are going to go inside of here. 2 are going to go into this bottom one, and this groove is going to go into the top one. When I set it in here, I try and set this shallow part, or the low part, pointing to there first initially, just to get it started. I'll pull up a little bit on the shift forks, just to get them lined up, and look at that, came right together. I like that. I like it a lot. So, before we go any further, what I'm going to do is on this side, I'm going to install what we call the gear shift wheel, which is part of the detent here, and that'll help me make sure it shifts correctly. So now we're going to take the gear shift wheel, which some people call the detent. It's just like this. Now you'll notice there's a small pin we talked about earlier. On the back of the shift star wheel, there's a small indent. That pin lines up with that. So before you do that, I usually take a screwdriver and carefully, anytime you're working in here, you want to be careful on any engine. Pull it back. I'll take the bolt off. I'll line up those two. Got it right away. And for now, I'm just going to put this in here hand tight. This is going to help hold everything in there. And we'll get it down. Just finger tight for now. There you go. Now it has hit the detent, and you're going to have high, low, neutral, and reverse. So now we know that it's going to be lined up properly on this side. So when we adjust it and we test it, we know it's going to be working fine. All right. So we're going to back up just a hair now. There we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a screwdriver. Now on this side of the engine, you'll notice the shift drum itself, and it has a slot inside there. I usually, just for testing purposes, I'll put the screwdriver in there and I can rotate it just like it was switching gears. Okay? So what you're going to see is this would be the secondary clutch, and it would be rotating forward. In other words, it would be going this way. Okay, just like that. It'll be driven by the CVT belt from the primary clutch that runs off the crank. So as this turns, right now we're in neutral. We can tell that because the counter shaft is not turning. So as I turn this, I will go into low. Now you can see the drive, turning the counter shaft sprocket. Now we're going to go into high. Now it turns. Okay, good. I'm trying to hold it. It wants to turn. Smooth. Go back down to low. Smooth. I'm going to go back down to neutral. Nothing. And I know that because as I'm spinning this, I can go either way. Now we're going to go down to reverse. Now you can see it go backwards. Even though I'm turning the shaft forward, this rotates backwards as this goes forward. So we know we got the transmission good. I'll go back to neutral. Now I just assembled the cases dry just to test the transmission out. Normally you would have a gasket that goes in between here and the crank would be inside there. But a lot of people want to know how to get that transmission together in there. It's kind of a pain in the butt. They want to make sure it's right. I've had folks that complain about only going 180 in both directions. That means probably one of the shift forks is not in the right groove, and so the gear is not in the right location. So check your shift forks, make sure they're put in where they're supposed to be put in like I showed you. And that's it for the transmission install. Hope you guys have a great day.